Have you ever felt like your entire life is a performance you never auditioned for? Like every gesture you make, every word you say, every silence you hold, was designed by someone else. A script handed to you at birth, rehearsed every day in front of a mirror you didn't place on the wall. You wear a name, a gender, a role, a history that never felt like it belonged to you. But you carry it anyway. Because no one ever asked you if you wanted to. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that becoming yourself was dangerous. Simone de Beauvoir said, "One is not born, but rather becomes, a woman." But what if the becoming wasn't a blooming, but a carving? A slow, relentless chiseling away of the parts of you that didn't fit the mold? What if you didn't grow into yourself, but were folded, bent, shaped by the hands of fear, tradition, and silence? You were taught to be quiet, not just with your voice, but with your soul. You were told to behave, to smile when it hurts, to soften your power so others wouldn't feel small around you. You learned to hide the fire in your chest because it burned too bright for those still comfortable in the dark. And you did it. You played the part. Perfectly. But late at night, when the noise fades and you're finally alone with your thoughts, something begins to crack. A whisper beneath the performance. A restlessness in your bones. A silent scream behind your eyes. You start to wonder, what have I lost in trying to be accepted? What pieces of me did I bury just to feel loved? And that question, raw and trembling, begins to tear through the illusion. Because deep down, you know. You know there's a version of you that never got to speak, never got to be. A version made not of compliance, but of truth. A version so wild, so sacred, it scared even you. You begin to feel it again, not as a clear image, but a sensation. A pull, a shadow in the background of every moment. And it hurts. Because the truth always does at first. But that pain, it's the beginning. The beginning of being reborn. But becoming yourself isn't a soft unraveling. It's violent. Not in the sense of harm, but in the way tectonic plates shift after being pressed down for centuries. When you finally stop pretending, the silence you once mastered begins to scream. Every mask you wore starts to suffocate. The smiles, the nods, the obedience, they all begin to feel like chains. And as they break, something unfamiliar emerges, something ancient, something real. You don't recognize her at first. She's unfiltered, she's angry, she's tired. She doesn't say what's expected. She doesn't move the way they taught you to. She doesn't care if it makes them uncomfortable. And yet, she is you. The you before the world told you who to be. The you who watched clouds and dreamed of oceans. The you who didn't yet know shame. The you who felt joy without earning it. And then, the grief hits. Because for so long, you believed the lie that hiding made you safe. That being accepted was worth being erased. That pleasing others was love. But it wasn't. It was survival. A slow, quiet death performed with a smile. And now that you see it, you can't go back. Do you feel it too? That ache in your chest? That longing you can't name? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your voice. Not the version you were told to present, but the one that trembles, breaks, and bleeds. The one that's real. We've all been hiding, and we're tired. This space is for your truth. You see, this isn't just about gender, or identity, or roles. It's about the universal experience of being shaped by expectations so tight, they suffocate your essence. We were all born into stories we didn't write. Some of us learned to perform. Some rebelled and lost themselves in the rebellion. But all of us, at some point, looked in the mirror and whispered, "Who am I, really?" And when no answer came, we filled the void with what others offered. Labels, jobs, relationships, applause. And yet the emptiness remained. Because truth isn't something given. It's something reclaimed. Dug out from under years of pretending, people-pleasing, and shame. It's dirty, it's painful, it's liberating. But the world doesn't reward authenticity. It punishes it. And that's why most never find themselves. Not because they can't, but because they're afraid. Afraid to be seen. Afraid to disappoint. Afraid to face the mirror with no armor on. You will disappoint people. You will be misunderstood. You will be called names. But let me tell you something brutal and freeing. You will survive. In fact, that's when you'll begin to truly live. Not as a puppet, not as a role, but as a soul finally speaking in her own voice. You will lose things: people, comfort, certainty. But what you gain is yourself. The self you buried beneath layers of performance. The self you forgot was waiting. She doesn't ask for permission. She doesn't seek validation. She walks into the room with silence and sets everything false on fire. Because the truth, your truth, is not polite. It doesn't sit quietly in the back. It doesn't whisper. It roars. And when it finally escapes your throat, you won't believe how long it was trapped there. And yes, it will feel like death, because a part of you is dying. The obedient self, the masked self, the one who smiled to survive. But in that funeral there is a birth, not into a new version but into the original one. The one the world tried to mold but couldn't erase. The one who remembers. The one who breathes without shrinking. The one who speaks even when her voice shakes. You were never meant to live hidden. You were meant to be seen. Not for the illusion, but for the contradiction, the softness and the rage, the grace and the fire, the fear and the courage, the woman becoming. Because yes, as Simone de Beauvoir said, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Becoming isn't passive, it's a rebellion, a sacred defiance against every definition forced on you. And now, you're at a crossroads. You can return to the quiet, safe version of yourself. Or you can step into the unknown, shaking and raw, but real. You can risk being misunderstood. You can risk being alone. But in that risk, you'll find a freedom deeper than acceptance, the freedom of truth. What if you stopped performing? What if you stopped apologizing for your existence? What if your tears were not a sign of weakness, but proof that you're finally awake? You don't owe them a version of yourself that fits into their comfort. You owe yourself liberation. And that begins when you decide that the pain of hiding is greater than the fear of being seen. That begins when you say, I'm done disappearing. And maybe you'll do it trembling. Maybe you'll do it quietly at first. But one day, your voice will rise. Not because you practiced it, but because you remembered it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. And when that moment comes, the world will try to put you back in the box. They'll call it rebellion. They'll call it selfish. They'll call it crazy. But what they're really saying is, we can't control you anymore. And that, my friend, is power. They told you to be nice, to smile when it hurt, to shrink so others could feel tall. And slowly, without knowing, you became a ghost inside your own life. Walking, breathing, pleasing, but never really being. You mistook silence for safety. But silence, when it cages the truth, becomes a grave. And your soul is not meant to be buried alive. So now, breathe. Not the shallow breath of survival, but the full breath of awakening. The kind of breath that cracks open the ribs and lets the truth spill out. You don't need to become anything for anyone. You are already enough. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are when no one is watching. When you walk into a room now, don't bring the version of you they trained. Bring the one that screams in your dreams. The one that watches from behind your eyes. The one that never left, even when you abandoned her. Let them call you intense. Let them say you've changed. Because you have. You've returned. You've remembered. You've chosen self over approval, freedom over comfort, truth over belonging. And if that costs you everything, let it. Because there are worse things than being alone. Like being surrounded and still unseen. Like being praised, but never known. Like living your whole life trying to be acceptable and dying never having been authentic. You are not here to decorate the silence of a world that's terrified of real voices. You are here to burn, to rise, to rebuild from the ashes of who they told you to be. And maybe, as you stand there, raw, exposed, uncertain, someone will see you. Really see you. Not the mask, not the role, but the soul. And that moment will be worth every step of the pain. Because now, finally, you're not pretending. And that is the birth of freedom. So tell your story, not the polished one, the real one. The one that shakes when you say it out loud. The one that's never been given permission. The one that still scares you. Speak it anyway. Because someone out there is still hiding, still pretending, still waiting for a sign that it's okay to be real. And maybe your voice will be that sign. If this spoke to your pain, if you saw yourself in these words, subscribe. Not because you have to, but because we need each other. Because this space, this channel, is for those who are done being silent. We need to talk more about what no one wants to say. We need to become what we were never allowed to be. And that begins with this moment, this breath, this truth. Don't look away. You're finally here.